Welcome to the Money and Wealth Show. Brought to you this week by AmericanManganeseInc.com. Here's your host, Alex Sakumas.
A broadcasting legend, a media pioneer, a Michener Award winner, a Webster Award winner, winning the Bruce Hutchinson Award, and someone I'm very glad is on the other side of the table since I've faced him as a guest 3 times on national panels. Rafe Mair, welcome.
Thanks very much, Alex. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to be on the other side. I've
maybe you won't be by the end of this.
I faced the pointed Rafe Mair questions before, and they're not often easy, but it's a real privilege to have you
nice
here.
Nice to be here.
Just recently, the government have announced that the BC economy is not they painted not as bleak a picture as they had originally expected. They say that we've got controlled spending and economic growth and increased revenues, and they've shaved $1.4 billion from a $1.7 billion projected deficit, which is an old trick that the Socreds used, the NDP used, that the Liberals are now using, and so we've now got a deficit of $309 billion. What's really happening?
Well, what's happening is that they're pulling the old tricks that W.A.C. Bennett started many, many years ago. Estimate your expenditures way, way high, then come in and say, like little Jack Horner, what a good boy am I, we're doing much better. I think the story here, though, is being missed a bit, Alex. They're now talking about everything being rosy. Now, that's what they said when we went into the recession. They didn't see that coming. They should have seen it coming. Their Ministry of Finance should have seen it coming. Right now, I'm here to tell you, and I'm not sure you'll disagree with me, we could be heading for worse times, particularly if the United States doesn't get its act together, than we've ever had before. So for them to be coming out and saying everything is just fine and sweet and lovely, they should be telling us what they plan to do if it hits the fan in the United States, if the president can't get together with Congress. There are a number of things that look very, very gloomy, but we don't hear that from them. We just hear, oh, everything is fine, and it's not.
They collected $770 billion from Ottawa, $770 million from Ottawa. They also collected an additional $1 billion from the implementation of the HST. So really, this is just a fancy shell game. Is that a fair description?
It goes back to the late Mel Couvalier's BS fund. You know, it's the same thing. It's just games, and it's nothing new in BC politics. I think the way you know that it's absolute BS is because the province and the Sun both thought it was good today, so you know automatically that it's not good. In the same way, their support of the HST, to vote no, that gives you a clear indication that all the indications are you should vote yes. There's no higher authority than the other side of what they say.
What about this unseen debt that they keep referring to when it comes to mega projects? We saw this under Ralph Klein in Alberta, and certainly now Christy Clark is going to have to deal with it. I think that the new roof down at the stadium downtown is going to be another boondoggle. What do you make of this? I mean, they're somehow foreshadowing a problem. I think. Am I wrong there?
They're whistling past a graveyard. And I want to say this, Alex. I've been talking about this now for about 4 years. And whenever I talk to audiences, they say, oh, that can't be. No government would do that. This is what they have done. They have forced BC Hydro to buy power from independent producers. And they must take it or pay it. Whether they want it or not, they're going to pay for it. They have to pay more than double what they can export it for, or about double what they can produce for themselves. Now, these private companies do not produce energy when it's needed. They produce it during the runoff. BC Hydro doesn't need the power then. BC Hydro has to buy that power, and it has to sell it as a loss. The amount of those contracts going up the next 20 or 30 years is now at about $55 billion. Last year, BC Hydro spent $600 million for power it didn't need. That's only going to go up. And the more IPPs, independent power projects, that they sign, the more that $55 billion is going to grow. It is madness, and I think good accountants will tell you, even an accountant that used to be with the provincial government will tell you that BC Hydro now if it were in the private sector, would be in bankruptcy protection. The only reason it isn't, because it can always come back to you and me to get the money that it misspends. But they're forced to do this. Don't blame BC Hydro. The Campbell government forced them to buy power they don't need.
The BC Utilities Commission, specifically on this point, have referred to IPPs as an answer to a non-existent problem.
They said it was not in the good interest of it was not in the best interest of the public.
So we're essentially, what you're saying, and of course this is what the Utilities Commission has said before, that we're going to have to continue to buy power from friends of the BC Liberals at a loss.
At a loss. It's not, these are not BC companies, so if you believe for a second in the trickle-down theory, which is nonsense, but if you did, it's certainly not going to trickle down here. It's going to trickle down wherever Warren Buffett is living. This money is all going to out-of-province large corporations, and it's an absolute scam. I can't believe that anybody can defend it. Even the Sun newspaper, as you know, a former Fraser Institute guy runs the editorial page, Fazil Miller. He said that this was folly. Yet somehow we have not got the media going at this hammer and tongs like they did with former Premier Clark on his fast ferries. This makes fast ferries look like chicken manure.
Let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about what the NDP should be doing in response. We'll be right back with Rafe Mair.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
American Manganese Inc. has a manganese deposit in Arizona. Indicated 6.7 billion pounds. Inferred 8.9 billion pounds. Potentially the lowest cost producer of electrolytic manganese. American Manganese Inc. has a projected cash cost of 44 cents a pound. The metal trades near $2 a pound. Do the math. Trading symbol AMY. Visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Here's your host, Alex Sakumas.
We're back with Rafe Mair. Tell us, what should the NDP be doing in response? They seem to be absent on a lot of these issues, and they're telling us that they want to be the next government. If they're really going to be the next government, what should be their response?
They, first of all, should learn the issue better. Now, I must say that Mr. Horgan and I think others have learned the issue, but the rank and file don't. It's important that they do, because this is a huge issue in every single constituency. We all have electricity, no matter where we are. They should understand that. They should also understand and make it very, very clear to the public that British Columbia is getting nothing out of this. It's not as if we're charging royalties or anything like that. This is our environment, and our water and our electricity is being shipped out of the province. That's simple. The NDP have got to get rid of this idea of using slogans, axe the tax, and they get the coal, we get the whole, that kind of stuff. They've got to get down and dirty with this and explain to people. It is not complicated, Alex. It is, though, a little hard to get started on it because people are not going to believe the first line. But once you can make that clear, that we are indeed doing this, then the public has got to understand. BC Hydro, BC Hydro is a wonderful corporation. W.A.C. Bennett murdered the environment when he put it all together 30, 40 years ago. But it's provided us with great electricity and cheap electricity. And he did it because he said electricity should be a matter of government policy. We should be able to say to taxpayers, this is what you're going to have to pay. You should be able to go to companies and say, this is the break you're going to get on electricity when you come to British Columbia. That company, that jewel, has almost been destroyed, and NDP better get on that and make people understand it, because that's the truth, and if the people don't understand it, they're going to make a very big political mistake.
I just wanted to go back to the budget briefly that they claim, or our fiscal picture that they claim is a much better than what they had expected. They actually saw an increase of 8%. In the total debt, a jump of almost $3.5 billion. When this happened under the NDP,
All hell broke loose.
A young fellow named Gordon Campbell leapt to his feet in the legislature and called it an outrage. Where are the NDP in this, and why are they not fighting against this? I mean, they've in order to get elected, they've got to show that they've got a good handle on the fiscal picture of this province. If they can't fight where they were previously pummeled, why should someone trust them?
Well, I think you make a good point, and it's one of the reasons that we should have the House in session more often so that these things can be raised.
Right.
It's very difficult to raise them and get media attention. Matter of fact, it's very difficult to get media attention on anything that's contrary to this Liberal government because they've been so biased throughout. But I think you've got the point. They've got to find ways to get this out to all British Columbians. There's no point in just getting the political smarty pants involved in this thing. You've got to get every single person to understand what's going to happen to their electricity rates, what's going to happen to the companies that they buy from, their rates, which are going to be passed back through to them. I mean, this is a horrendous scenario that's coming up. BC Hydro is going bankrupt, and the NDP have a bounden duty to make sure people understand it. You know, it's an amazing thing, Alex. When I was in the legislature 1,000 years ago, W.A.C. Bennett was just a bête noire. He was the worst thing that ever happened, my God, and look what he's done to the province. He is now an NDP icon because of what he did. Now, if they've gone that far, if they've made that jump, and they should, then they surely can make the jump to explaining why what he did was so good and what it's going to mean when we lose it.
Glenn Clark used to routinely pick up books on W.A.C. Bennett, by the way, and they would be strewn across his desk in the Premier's office when he was the Premier. So you're absolutely correct. He is an icon to the NDP.
No doubt about it.
Let's talk a little bit about the HST. You're against it.
I'm against it for a very fundamental reason. The same reason I think that Carol Taylor is against it. The same reason a lot of people who have thought about it are against it. Consumption taxes are unfair, plain and simple. People who are making more money should pay more tax. Now, when you start to tax necessaries, it hits the less well-off far harder than it hits you and me and other people that are making good money. So I think essentially down just at the very basis, it's a bad way to tax. The second thing I think is that this has been done in such haste, and it's been done with so little public exposure, that it's very hard for us to say yes. By that I mean no. It's very, very hard for us to support this tax without being fully in the picture as to all that was going on. Now, it was going on too, Alex, because you may remember about 3 or 4 months before the 2009 election, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Hansen, had a report on his desk from his own ministry saying, don't do it. Now that
even though, to interrupt you, he claims he'd never seen it.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. Those reports just don't come out of thin air. Bureaucrats don't run around and say, I wonder what I'm going to do.
You and I both worked in Victoria. We both know that if a report like that hit anywhere close to a minister's desk, he would have known about it.
No question about that. Moreover, you know that they have to have been in negotiations with the feds. You don't make these kind of deals by picking up the phone and calling the Minister of Finance federally and say, oh, by the way, let's bring in the HST tomorrow. This takes months and months of preparation. I've been in these kind of situations. Statutes have to be changed. Orders in council have to be changed. Policies have got to be changed. And the second thing, of course, is the public has to be informed. Well, nothing has been done with the public. The public was not informed, and I think they're entitled to say until we are properly informed, the answer is yes or we don't want it. The other point I would make is, does anybody really believe that this government is going to lower that tax 2% in 3 years? I mean, would you put 1 ounce of credibility in what any of these people say?
No, I wouldn't. And I think I made this point. I had Bill Vanderzem on recently. I had Tony Hepburn, the chairman of Odlum Brown, on, and even though one bill, of course, is for extinguishing it, and Mr. Hepburn believes that it's a good tax to implement. They both agreed that the government has many hurdles to overcome in order to.
Well, tell me again one more time. Why is my paying a lot more taxes to big business helpful to me? What's so good about that? Now, they say, well, it trickles down. The big business gets this money and they spend it on so many things, it comes back down to the lower income people. Well, you know, J.K. Galbraith had a great line for that. He said the trickle-down theory is like you feed a horse oats, and if you feed them enough, a few oats trickle out the other end for the sparrows. And that's what it is. And the other thing is that all boats rise with the same tide. not if your anchor's so heavy that it won't rise, you go under. So those kind of things are wrong. The fact of the matter is this is a bad tax. It is a tax. It's going to cost people an awful lot of money, and nobody can trust the government to lower it.
On that note, let's take another break.
Sorry.
We'll be right back.
You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
Molycorp Gold Corp has substantial assets. Magnesium deposit, inferred 52 billion pounds. Molybdenum deposit, indicated 1.9 million tons. Inferred 1.8 million tons at 0.087% MO. Past silver producer, average 182 ounces per ton. Trading symbol, MOR. Website, molycorp.com. Or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. Here's your host, Alex Sakumas.
Welcome back with Rafe Mair. Tell us about the financial impact of what I have referred to and what you too have referred to as the BC government's quixotic or contradictory, if you will, position on the environment.
Well, first of all, let's quickly talk about the rivers. The environmental damage to those is absolutely enormous. There's no question about it. They pretend that it's not, but it is. It's huge.
How long are we on the hook for these projects that we talked about before?
Up to 40 years.
40 years?
Yeah, sometimes some are 20, up to 40. Now, the other one that we have to talk about, I think, is the pipelines and the tankers coming down the coast. And I want people to understand this. Those are not risks. They are certainties. If you're going to do something without any time constraint, it no longer is a risk. It's only a certainty waiting to happen. Now, we just saw the day before yesterday, whenever it was, Exxon had another huge spill. The oil spills of Enbridge, they're noted for their oil spills. I think they had 3 of them last year, one to the Kalamazoo River. Now, the cost of those things to the public is enormous, as well as the social cost of having our environment, if I may use the technical term, buggered up. Now, the other thing that people should understand is we don't get any money out of this. It's not as if the money from the pipelines is going to the British Columbia government. That money is going to Alberta, maybe the federal government, it's going to the companies and so on. All we do is provide the land over which it goes and which it's certainly going to spill all over. The tankers, we don't get anything out of that either. That's not for us, that's for China. So those tankers are going down with the absolute certainty that one of them is going to cause a huge problem somewhere down the line. And we don't even get a little earnest money to keep us happy. We get zilch out of this.
What about this Taseko mine? The Premier is big on this. Even the Prime Minister and his Conservative government, who aren't necessarily known to be and very environmentally friendly, although I think they've done a fairly good job on the climate change or global warming file, considering all the contradictory and
try them on the fish farms.
Well, fish farms, I would agree with you on the fish farms, but talk to me a little bit, and let's get to that, but talk to me first about this Taseko mine. Why is the Premier so big on this?
I have no idea. I think the very least you should do is wait until the very last story they give, because they give a different story every time the thing is turned down. They got a new story.
Right.
And it seems to me that this gets down as much to democracy as it does to the environment. First Nations have rights. We can't pretend that they don't. It may have been nice when all they were sitting off in a reserve somewhere not making any noise, but they have some rights. If they don't want this to happen badly, how have we got the right to tell them that they must do it, unless we're prepared to expropriate and do it? All that I understand about that, Alex, is it is bad environmentally, and there's no way that you can get around that, and you can't repair them. Now, the weasel word mitigation comes in here. And I can tell you very quickly a little story from years ago when they were doing a mill update in Port Mellon, and we used to fish for cutthroat over there, sea run cutthroat. And all of a sudden we saw people, scientists, going up and down the water and the beaches. My friend and I said, well, what are you doing here? Oh, we're finding a place to put the eelgrass to get rid of because we're getting rid of the eelgrass elsewhere. And my question was, well, don't you think if God intended eelgrass to be there, he'd have put it there? It won't take, it won't last. And it's exactly what happened. They put out this press release, we've done all these things. But it was nothing in the end. It was just some glitter to make people feel better. So all I can say is I'm very distrustful of that. I think Premier Clark is wrong politically as well as everything else.
Talk to us about the economic impact of fish farms, particularly along the coast.
We found out a week or 10 days ago, Alex, that the scientist that the provincial government was relying upon when it expanded the fish farms was just putting out a pile of rubbish. His own colleagues blew the whistle on him. And so and all during that time, of course, I was in the game, but Alexander Morton was the one that was reading it. They were pillaring her, threatening to throw her in jail and so on the advice of somebody who was coming out with scientific rubbish. Now, the fish farms are a loser for us every way around. First of all, they pollute the water. There's no question that the sea lice from them kill the migrating smolts, salmon smolts. Now we know that they're very prone to spreading disease that isn't here yet. The whole fish farm industry in Chile broke down, went out of business because they imported eggs that were infected. Now, they don't have native salmon there, but they lost their whole industry. If that disease comes, and I think there's a very good chance it will because of these eggs, then it's just going to wipe out salmon runs, period. There is no plus in this. Now, if at the end of the day, you could say, well, these fish farms are providing fish that otherwise would be caught as wild fish, so therefore we're saving, blah, blah, blah. We're not. They're not saving a damn thing, they're destroying it. And the NDP is now out of the picture because they say it's now a federal matter. But they should be raising this issue. It's a catastrophe. It's a shame.
Let's take another break. More with Rafe Mair in our final segment.
You're watching The Money and Wealth Show.
American Manganese Inc. has a manganese deposit in Arizona. Indicated 6.7 billion pounds. Inferred 8.9 billion pounds. Potentially the lowest cost producer of electrolytic manganese. American Manganese Inc. has a projected cash cost of 44 cents a pound. The metal trades near $2 a pound. Do the math. Trading symbol AMY. Visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 604-531-9639.
The Money and Wealth Show is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Here's your host, Alex Sakumas.
We're back with our remaining few moments with Rafe Mair. I have to tell you, it was a real privilege having you here. I think it's a huge privilege to anyone to be sitting across the table from you. You are truly a broadcasting legend, and thank you so much for being our guest today.
Alex, thank you very much. My pleasure.
You bet. Thanks very much to broadcasting legend Rafe Mair for being here. Thank you also to the Sutton Place Hotel. Thanks to all of the folks who made that possible, including the Glardy family. And I will be away for the month of August. In my place will be Danielle Park, who will be doing interviews at the 2011 Agora Financial Investment Symposium, and I'm sure you will enjoy those. I will be back in September, and until then, I wish you well.
The Money and Wealth Show has been brought to you by AmericanManganeseInc.com.